Hey everyone, and welcome to the Live Cyclist. Today we have Erin O'Neill joining us. Erin, welcome to the stage.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Excited to talk to you about what's going on in audiobooks and more specifically about your cancel flow. And just a heads up to everyone, I met Erin at the Brace Forge event in Las Vegas. We had a great time together, became friends. I'm very excited to have her here and to chat about work as well, because we basically just chatted about our lives when we first met, right, Erin?
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, okay, cool. So let's start from point zero. So, what is audiobooks.com and what are your big goals at audiobooks.com as their head of Lifecycle?
Yeah. Audiobooks.com, as you may have guessed, is an audiobook subscription and retailer. First and foremost, a monthly subscription, but we also offer annual. Going into our history a little bit, we started out under a different name. And if you think like early Netflix days, it was mail out CDs in subscription format. So as a company, we've been in the subscription industry for quite a long time. My tenure doesn't span quite that far back as the mail out, but today, as a digital audiobook subscription, we offer a credit a month and then additional opportunities for listening. My goal as head of Lifecycle is ultimately boiled down to churn reduction. So for those of you who don't know what churn reduction is, it's ultimately trying to keep people engaged with a subscription, continue to have them see value, feel heard in their feedback. And so those are some of my goals as head of Lifecycle.
Cool. Awesome. So we're gonna talk exactly about that. So let's head up the scenario. Can you share some context about the life cycle led growth story that you have for us today?
Totally. Yeah, I'm really excited to go into detail on our cancellation flow. Might be self-explanatory what that means, but again, just for the people who aren't necessarily in the subscription industry, the cancel flow is the process of which one might go through to cancel a subscription. So that's everything from when they first think of canceling, where they can find the cancellation button, to after clicking that, the different components that populate in front of them to maybe keep them around. So we've done some really extensive testing within the last year to our cancel flow. I want to talk a bit about where we launched off with that cancel flow testing and where we're at today with some of our learnings. Ultimately, I want to focus on three components in our cancel flow that have been the most successful. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But overall, the goal is to share our strategies that have led to about a 10% decrease in cancellations direct from this flow.
Woohoo! Okay. Incredible. And have you had experiences with other services that inspired you to create this value focused retention strategy for audiobooks.com?
Absolutely. Like even outside of course, we've done like competitive analysis in doing this testing, but outside of that, one that sticks out personally to me is Disney Plus. Disney Plus took a very content forward, very relevant approach to their cancellation flow. So when you're showing intention of cancel, the first thing that they're populating is images of the things that you have already enjoyed. They're generating nostalgia and excitement and really core memories of the things that you've enjoyed from their service in the past. But on top of that, they're populating things that they think you specifically want to stick around for. So, if you've watched X, here's something that's coming out in a few months that we really think you're going to love. I love that approach because it's leaving, even if those users do continue in the cancellation process, it's leaving such a positive note in that process, and they're reflecting on all of the good times they've had, and possibly even thinking about longer term goals to return to Disney Plus for new content that might not be coming out for a short amount of time or a longer amount of time. So I loved their approach. I think these days we've all gone through, I would say, a variety of different cancellation processes. So there are a few that also stick out as being quite negative. Services that hide the cancel button, services that make it unnecessarily complicated to cancel their subscription. We're very close to being fully out of the days where you had to call in to cancel. But that's another example of a subscription that really just doesn't leave you on a positive note, doesn't leave you feeling happy about your relationship to that service, and doesn't make you want to come back or refer a friend to come back. So that's a bit of my thought process, more anecdotally, when approaching our cancel flow.
Oh, yeah. Now that you mentioned that, I just remember that I have this friend who mentioned that whenever she goes into a cancel flow and she decides to cancel something, she will screenshot all the steps so that when someone comes back to charge her, even though she canceled, she has proof that she has to cancel the subscription, which kind of sucks, right? That you kind of have to
It's
worry
almost
about
like
that kind of thing.
It's almost like needing to take screenshots of a toxic relationship of certain messages because you're feeling like almost gaslit in that situation. Hey, I did cancel. Why are you still charging me? So
Yeah.
definitely, that's a strong example of a negative approach.
Awesome. Okay. And what was your approach to creating this retention strategy? What was your first step?
Yeah, I think as a smaller team, we're always focused on the highest lever of how we can impact churn reduction. And so a real clear step to us was the cancel process. It's ultimately the only chance that you have as a marketer to reach every single person that's showing some intention of cancel. Obviously, we have churn prediction and we try to hit them even before that point. But this is really the one point that they're really coming to you and saying, hey, I have a problem. So identifying that we really wanted to work on the cancel flow. And then from there, it was clear to us that we could tweak what we had in the beginning. So when we jumped into cancel flow testing, it was really just a click to cancel, one button, we ask why, and that's it. We weren't doing anything with that information. So ultimately, where we started out is trying our best to do a huge competitive analysis and look at what's worked in the past for our members.
Yes. All right. And could you share maybe your main three steps to ideating solutions for that?
Yeah. So, of course, the competition analysis was huge for us, looking at what anecdotally worked and didn't work, what left us with a good taste in our mouth, what didn't. A big point for us was looking at previous testing that we had done, our previous understanding of our member base and what they're looking for. And so, a key component of that was flexibility. We had shortly before addressing our cancel flow, we had our customer service team had been offering the people who did choose to call in and cancel the option to just take a break instead. And what we found from our customer service team was they were seeing huge success in offering this flexibility. Sometimes people don't want to cancel, they just need a short break. They're not, they're going on vacation, even might be a really great reason why they just need to pause instead of cancel. And so we wanted to offer that flexibility as well. The third part, I would say, is looking at our communications and what works and doesn't work. And for us, what we've noticed is being as upfront and clear as possible is going to benefit our subscribers. So to recap that, because I've been a little all over the place with that. So first, looking at Disney Plus and taking inspiration from that and really wanting to be content forward. Second, looking at our internal data and what's worked from other departments and wanting to offer flexibility. And then third, looking at things that people have responded to really well in the past, and that is upfront and honest communication. And so with that, we created a content forward flow that offers the ability to pause and offers the ability to stick around and just get an email before your next payment instead. So that's really where we came to ideating our three most successful components of the flow.
Cool. And I'm curious if you ran any experiments on those ideas.
So interesting, because I think as an experiment forward company and a life cycle professional who really values experimentation, it's so easy to spiral out with all of these different test ideas that you can be running, especially from a marketing sense, to prove out a bigger change that might need to happen. But instead of doing that, instead of trying to do micro testing from the beginning, we looked at these things that we knew. We looked at our CS team, we looked at the data from our communications, we looked at other flows, and we just jumped in with our best foot forward to see what stuck. That was, a heavy dev lift, and we had a lot of trust and support from the rest of our team in doing such a big initiative just off of intuition more than anything. But it worked fantastically well for us. And that's not to say by any means that what we jumped in with initially was the exact fix. At one point we had been testing promotional offers as an example and offering people a price discount. And it was really clear to us quite quickly that that wasn't what people are looking for. So of course we're quick on our feet and we're pivoting to test new things and continually testing. I mean, we're about to launch a new phase of testing just in the next couple of weeks, and we have more planned for 2025. So by no means are we getting stagnant with the testing, but I also think intuition, understanding your members outside of this and jumping in with trust in ourselves was a really good move for this cancel flow.
Cool. Especially as you mentioned, since you have a small team as well, it can be you're taking away attention from other things if you're continuously testing everything, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. And can you share one challenge that you faced during the implementation process and what you learned from it?
Yeah. Like I said, it's really important to us that at the point of cancel, we're doing everything we can to make that person feel valued and excited about the service. And so a really important part to us, or a thought behind where we were going to jump in, was personalization. Now, personalization from a life cycle perspective can be very different from a development perspective. Of course, for me, I want each person that reaches this page to feel seen and heard in their experience. And I want everything to change so that they feel like they're the center of attention in that moment. Now, we can't always have it that way because it's pretty complicated, of course, to have, if user has X credits, then show this. And if they have this, then show this. And unlimited permutations of what could possibly be shown on a page. So we worked really closely with our development team to figure out, okay, what does need to be scoped? If we want a section to be dependent on how many books they've listened to in the past, how can we find a good way to just do, let's say, 2 versions of that so that there's still personalization and they feel seen, but we're not creating endless scenarios to be created by the dev team once we get into that point. A good example of this is we wanted to represent where the user is in their current cycle, their monthly cycle, let's say. So they have just gotten their credit. That's a different use case than somebody who got and used their credit 2 weeks ago and they don't have another credit and they won't for another 2 weeks. So what we wanted to do is pull in the number of credits that they have, as well as a bit of copy that's going to help determine what would be most beneficial for them instead of canceling. So, hey, Mariana, you have a credit right now. Why not use one of your credits on all of these books that we think you are really going to love? And we were able to pull in personalized books without making the copy too intensely personalized. So if you, let's say, didn't have a credit at time of cancel, that's when it can be a little bit more overwhelming for you and you feel disconnected from the next time that you restart that monthly cycle and you get a new credit. So what we did in that situation is we brought forward other books that are going to be coming out around the time that you'll get your next credit, as well as a countdown to the days until you get it. So, hey, there's only 9 days until you get your credit. Here are some great books that you can shop around, add to your wish list, get excited about. Also, did you know that you can purchase another credit at a discounted rate? And here you go. That's how you can do that. So I think the main struggle was scoping and working together with dev to make sure that we're offering a valuable amount of personalization without it getting out of hand and becoming a project that just gets dropped because it becomes too big.
I love that. I love that. So paying attention to the scope of the project, making it as simple as possible, but as impactful as possible within that kind of simplicity, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what results did you get from it?
Yeah. So again, we went from it being a very basic, very simple flow and essentially jumped right into the opposite end of that, something personalized and more complicated and multi-step. From that change, we saw flow abandonment drop off from 0.2% to 2.8%. These are small numbers still, don't get me wrong, but that jump from 0.2 to 2.8 is incredibly huge for a non-unique number of page visitors. That's in the 1,000% as a delta. So we were very excited to see the number of people that, sure, they might have re-entered the flow at some point, but they were showing that something that we were doing, something that we were saying in that moment was at least making enough of an impact for them to click out and do more research on the offers that we were making. Of course, flow abandonment is not the same as churn reduction or limiting cancellation, but from that 2.8%, we were able to drill into what was most impactful to them. So drawing back in from the three components I talked about before, which was content, pausing, and communications, we were able to see exactly what people were picking up in place of canceling. So 50% of those people were jumping into a pause instead, which is informative company-wide to a sense of subscription fatigue that a lot of subscribers are feeling these days, where it's common for them to want to opt in and out on their terms a bit more. So of the 50% that were dropping out of this flow and taking a pause, we found that 70% of those were coming back at the end of that pause to renew their subscription, which is an incredibly strong number of people. When you're looking at, we would have lost all of those people if they hadn't taken that pause offer. So outside of pausing, we saw 32% of people had just asked for a reminder. And what that looks like is they leave our cancel flow, but click a button essentially that sends them an email before their next payment. And that's good on both ends because they get to continue enjoying what it's like to be a subscriber to audiobooks.com. And we have this built up trust that, hey, we don't want you to just stick around for no reason. We want you to go and explore the subscription, see if you can find more value. And we're still going to remind you before the next payment in case you realize that you do want to step back and take a break from us. Outside of that, it was around 9% that had clicked through for something content related. But we value that content piece much larger than what the 9% represents, because it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to click through on a book cover of something you've read in the past to see value in it. So regardless of it only being 9% that were taken out of the flow for that, it was a much larger amount of people, even the people who'd continued to cancel, that saw those books in that final moment and were reminded of all the things that we had accomplished together in terms of listening to books. So overall, like I mentioned at the beginning, we did see a 10% decrease in our test version of this flow versus the control. And that was just our initial number. We've continued new iterations since then and continue to learn more and more about our changing subscribers and a changing landscape for subscription.
One thing that I love about the way that you bring this up is that you're creating FOMO, like with creating, like sharing the coming up content, but at the same time, it's not just because we create like anxiety in people's lives. It's more like I want to make sure that you know like what you'll be missing out, and then like I want to make sure you make an informed decision here. So it's totally out of care and not out of like just selling more.
Absolutely, and I think realistically, like I mentioned earlier, we're in a world right now where almost everyone has an active subscription at any given time. And almost everyone, on the other hand, has at least canceled a few subscriptions in their lifetime. People do not, in their minds, call out a good experience. They just remember it as good. But if it's a bad experience, I think a lot of us can really quickly remember what that was like and be really hesitant to ever go back to that subscription. We can be really open and honest with friends and family about our lack of trust. And sometimes that lack of trust isn't even necessarily tied back to the cancel process. It's just remembered as a lack of trust. So I stood in a room of other subscription professionals a year or two now and took an oath. We were made to stand up and put our hands up that we would never hide the cancellation button. And I think that that's something that I value so much, because it's not, at the end of the day, just about keeping people subscribed. It's about keeping their trust and keeping their positive impression of the time that they spent with you. And if you're sacrificing those things, there's just no need to keep them around.
Yeah. And there's no campaign you can do like later on to kind of bring them back, right?
Absolutely.
Love it. We got a comment from Marina. She said, I love it when companies offer the pause option. I've used that several times. I think we're all with you there, Marina. I think,
Absolutely.
right. It's so great. And I was just thinking of like personal experiences. I think there's definitely like the need to pause because you're traveling, but also like because sometimes you're just too busy at work, right? Or things like that, that we're just, if that is more of like a seamless kind of experience, yeah, you feel like this is more of a relation, like a healthier relationship for you, where you can say like, hey, this has been working great for me. Right now it won't work. I'll let you know when it works again.
Absolutely. And on the other hand of it, it's a type of quiet confidence from a company to offer something like that. Because if you think about some of the big streamers, Netflix, HBO, let's say, sometimes people, especially these days, want to pop in and out based on the content being the content being offered. That's completely normal. You see something over here that you want to watch, you watch it, and then you might not see immediate value in continuing until the next thing comes out. I think it offers a lot of confidence on behalf of our company that we know there's going to be another book that you want to come back for. And if right now isn't that time, that's okay with us. We don't want to, lose you forever by you not seeing value in the product and getting frustrated and completely canceling. If you want to wait, we're going to continue telling you about books. We're going to continue telling you and getting you excited about the audiobook industry. And we're very confident that, as somebody who's been interested in these audiobooks in the past, that you're going to see more value moving forward.
Thank you. I love that. And what is one learning that you got from this project that you're taking to future ones?
Yeah. We were I mentioned this before about promo offers. It was a shock to us because I think just intuitively, you do expect that when somebody's canceling, that they're not finding enough value in what they're paying for the subscription. But we saw those promo offers being accepted at less than a 1% take rate, which is extremely low compared to, let's say, a 50% pause rate. So it was a huge learning that in that moment of cancellation, it's not about money for a lot of people in that sense. It's about seeing enough value to justify the cost. Now, of course, we want to continue doing promo offers like that for people who are engaging, and we want to reward our members. But a really important learning is you also really don't want to train your users that they need to enter into some kind of cancellation or negative intent to be rewarded. We want to reward people on their birthdays or on their membership anniversaries. We don't necessarily think it's the right time at point of cancel to offer something like that. And we learned that that's true.
I'm curious about the reward system. How does that work?
Yeah, it's something that we're still developing. We're really in the process of figuring out a full landscape of where our members are in terms of tenure. But loyalty, streaks, this type of reward is something that we're extremely focused on right now. We've had a lot of people that have been with us since, like I mentioned, the early days when we were shipping out CDs, and to see those people still sticking around far into our digital subscription era, it's definitely a focus for us to reward that and give them more opportunity for cheaper additional books, for discounted a la carte or purchasing prices, and additional perks like free credits, or we have a VIP program where you can get additional listening every month. So finding ways to continually allow the audiobook lover to be at the forefront of our promotions.
Cool. Awesome. All right. And looking back on your experience, do you remember experimenting with anything that did not work out for you at the time? And what were your learnings from that?
Yeah. I've spoken a lot about the success of our pause program and subscription flexibility. It's something I'll stand behind forever. And riding that wave of excitement that we were able to keep these people around and give them value, we ran a campaign that was called Return from Pause. And so the goal was to catch people who were in the middle of a pause. You get to pick 30, 60, or 90 days. So they could have been 60 days into their 90-day pause. And we wanted to offer them the ability to come back early. And we gave them a lot of reasons why. You can, listen to this extra content, for example. It's ready for you if you're ready to come back. What we found, though, is that the people who had asked for flexibility and asked for a break, they weren't seeing value in coming back early. They weren't excited about that. And that's a situation where we could have lost a bit of trust with our members by trying to pressure them to come back earlier, or at least that's how it felt. So what we've learned from that is it's good for our mutual relationship to allow these people the patience of exploring their pause, taking their break. And although we continue to communicate lightly about books that'll be around when they're back, by no means do we find any success in trying to bring them back early.
Interesting. Yeah, it is counterintuitive in a way. So it's cool that you got that. There is another comment here that I wanted to share. The cancel flow results sound amazing. Curious if post that you also did any churn analysis and if you were able to reduce the cancel rate itself.
Yeah, so we did see an impact on cancel rate through the cancel flow, of course. I think it translated into a lot of happier people. A major thing after looking at cancel flow results was looking at the impact of the cancel flow on win-backs. So win-backs for us is a promotional opportunity to bring cancels back in. And we, again, found something really interesting with win-backs. With the people who have canceled previously, we've always wanted to offer them a price discount to come back. They've seen some value in the past. We want to give them an opportunity to come back at a discount. But what we found post-cancel flow testing is a lot of people who have been canceled for a certain amount of time. For us, it's around 100 days. They don't necessarily want a price offer. They just need to be reminded of what they felt when they were here. So by sending those cancels, books that they have liked in the past, recommendations for things they should come back for, as well as just general industry insights on what's new and exciting in the audiobook world, we saw far more returns from those cancels than when we were offering price discounts. So that's another example of how the cancel flow left a good taste in people's mouth, left them excited with our service, and doesn't necessarily need to be price motivated.
Cool. Awesome. And what is one piece of advice that you can share with Lifecycle folks that want to make their optimization process more efficient?
Yeah. I've alluded to us being a small team, and I always say small but very mighty. I think from our perspective, we're kind of constantly trying to evaluate a bit of push and pull between big industry leading experiments as well as small fixes that make members that have been with us for a long time feel heard. Things that are really just small pieces of feedback or bug fixes or quality of life improvements. So we're constantly trying to evaluate the push and pull between that. And the advice that I have there is always experiment. It's very important to test how things work with your member base. But it's so easy to fall into analysis paralysis and try and analyze every element of what people are doing to make a decision about the next step. And as a small team, there's just not the capacity to do that. So experiment, look at your data that's available to you, but also really trust your instinct, your intuition. Lifecycle professionals have a really good read often on what their subscribers or their customers want. And you need to trust that gut sometimes. And from what I've seen, it's proven to work that if we spend hours and hours analyzing and try and jump in with that versus jump in with what we wanted to from the beginning, almost always the instinct is the one that's going to win out. So to summarize, closely monitor your KPIs. Don't be afraid to dive in on certain behavioral trends and to talk to other departments, but trust your gut on how you should move forward with those things.
Nice. And you mentioned the vow that you the oath that you took with everyone, with other life cycle professionals. Do you also do you also talk to other life cycle professionals? Like, do you kind of have this access to a community somehow?
Absolutely. So, I mean, you and I met at Braze Forge, and as much as you alluded to us being quickly close friends, I think there's also been so much between us that we've been able to share. I remember when we met, not to call you out on this, but you were talking about taking a step back and doing these user profiles. I don't even know if you remember this.
I remember.
We're talking about creating user profiles. And it was something that is so integral to the life cycle world, but I had overlooked. And so even though you just confidently moved forward from that point, that's something where even just in a quick conversation, you made such a huge impact on me. I think going to these shows, going to these conferences has been hugely influential because I can reach out to you at any time as an example. And there are numerous other people that you meet along the way that have such diverse experience in a life cycle sense. Often there's a lot that we agree on, but unique perspective is pivotal to really understanding how you can make a difference in your member base. So going to conferences, really trying your best to strike up conversation, and keeping connected through LinkedIn, through email, and through events like this.
Now I remember we were standing in line
Yeah,
for brunch.
exactly.
And talking about, user profiles. Cool. And are there any other you mentioned Disney Plus a lot, but are there any other benchmarks in terms of brands doing a great job when it comes to life cycle strategies?
Totally. A standout for me is Headspace. I think, actually, I want to talk about two apps. Both are app-based. We're an app-based company, so that's where I tend to focus a lot of my attention. Headspace first, because they do a fantastic job with their early onboarding, with essentially welcoming in the user and getting them really excited really quickly about their app. How they do this is they stick to being very relevant to what they're offering and why the user is coming to them. So people download Headspace. If you don't know what that is, it's a meditation app, a daily meditation app that offers a variety of content to help you relax and unwind. So the moment that you open their app, they're not jumping in with, hey, you need to pay for our subscription, because that's stressful. That's what these people are trying to avoid. So instead, they lead you through I'm getting like calm thinking about it. They lead you through a very calming, a very relaxed flow that begins with you having to stop and take a breath because nothing's happening on screen other than them saying, take a breath. So you're instantly seeing some gratification for why you downloaded that app, and you're seeing it work before they're even populating any information about how the payment process works. Now, on the other side, they nail really early onboarding and excitement. Another app that I think does a fantastic job, this one a little bit longer term, is an app called Miracle Morning, which is somewhat related to Headspace. They do a morning routine app. It's a morning routine app that offers 6 ways every single day that you can improve your morning and improve your life. And a really pivotal part of it for me is they have a huge community of people that have done this and have seen incredible results. And I think we've all been there where we want to join the 5 a.m. club and we want to have a better start to our day through the morning routine. But I know I've failed in the past, and just getting up at 5 a.m. hasn't changed my life. So I think having reinforcement from a huge community of people that have seen that work for them has been incredible. So every single time that you're hitting a milestone in that app, day 1, day 3, day 7, you're getting videos from people in that community talking about how they remember being at the point that you're at. And now here's where they're at, and here's what it's done for them. And so that sense of community and social proof is handled fantastically with Miracle Morning.
Oh, wow. And is it in a format like a very UGC kind of format, not that well produced, more like a natural kind of video?
Exactly. Absolutely. It's a little bit of both, because you also get interjections from the ultimate writer of Miracle Morning, which started out as a book. So he's addressing you in a little bit more of a direct and professional way. But then you have genuinely just other app users who have created videos trying to get you excited about something that's really changed their life. And it's authentic, it's community building, it's even just habit building, because you have this sense of joy and excitement and accomplishment from just checking off that you did your morning routine. So yeah, they handle that type of streak, that benefit from a streak really, really well.
I love that. I love that. It makes me think of how it's just a change in people's perspective, because I feel like a lot of times when someone is kind of more advanced than you are in certain thing that you're striving to, grow in, you can treat that with an envious kind of point of view, or you can treat that with an inspirational point of view. Like you get inspired because of that person, and then because they're there, you can see that you can also get there as well, and you can get the benefit of whatever it is that wherever that they are right now. And that is such a beautiful kind of cultural shift that they promote within the app, and that can also be applied in different moments in people's lives. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I think that evidence is so important with something like a morning, because you're not just going to walk up to somebody on the street that you know nothing about them and say, "Hey, what's your morning like? I want to be like you." You don't know them. You don't know if they're successful. You don't know if they're striving for the same goals. But if you're trying to run a marathon and then somebody in this app is saying, "Wow, I was able to make a difference in this specific goal," that's going to be really meaningful for you. And that's going to really help show and empower that you can do it too.
Yeah, it creates some almost like a mentorship, but not kind of more scalable type of mentorship where it's not necessarily one-on-one. And that example on its own, could you kind of translate that into audiobooks, or is that something that you're thinking about?
We have really been playing around with our community aspect. There are apps that do it really well. Goodreads is an example of an app that just really navigates community and books in a fantastic way. From our perspective, we're a little bit more focused on streaks, which is something that, Duolingo, as an example, does a really good job of. So that's something we're exploring. We're exploring people's access to their data. So I'm not certain if you subscribe to Grammarly.
No, I mean, not paid Grammarly, I think.
So Grammarly does a really good job as an example of reinforcing the goals that you've set through an email. So I get an email weekly that'll tell me, hey, Erin, you're in the top, I don't want to toot my own horn. You're in the top 90% of people who have been the most productive this week. So you are more productive than 90% of people. You're making less, that's might be an exaggeration, but bear with me. You're making less mistakes than X% of people. You are improving month over month. You are making, less spelling mistakes, and the mistakes that you were making over here, you're not making anymore. So we're really interested in focusing on the user themselves, because audiobooks can be a little bit more personal, alongside also always looking at book clubs as an opportunity to bring people together and discuss more. So I think we're kind of on both sides with individual data and individual achievements, as well as ways to foster community outside of our app.
And do you have any partnerships in place with book clubs right now?
In terms of partnerships, we've worked with Reese's Book Club for quite a long time. We're really always looking at new opportunities there. We've been creating new book club questions even from our site, just to give people the opportunity to have a jumping off point. So in terms of partnerships, not necessarily where we're focused at the moment, but I think we're always open to ways of bringing people together over audiobooks.
Cool. So, and I got to ask you this: how do you see interactive emails impacting Lifecycle marketing?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think these days there's an incredibly unlimited amount of ways that you can hit your users. If you want to say something to somebody, there's social media, there's email, there's app, there's WhatsApp, there's text, there's billboards. The list really goes on. So whatever you're doing, you have to do really well. And I think that interactive emails do two things really well. I think first, they make things more fun. And I know that sounds really basic and maybe not like everybody's goal with communications is to just be fun. But it's insanely important, because if you're not, you're really training people that your emails aren't giving them that joy, and they're going to stop opening them. A really, really strong example is I saw at a conference a speaker from Mr. Beast, who is a very fun brand. It's a chocolate bar brand. And so in their emails, they were doing such honestly kind of random and innovative things that are really approachable. And so an example that I've shared in the past is they have a competition and it says, click this email 200 times to get a free chocolate bar. So funny. Or they'll send out literally just a picture of a jar with, let's say, gumballs in it. And they'll say, guess how many gumballs are in this jar. And this is not even that closely related to their product. It's not even really driving any actual purchase. But what it is doing is it's teaching people that opening these emails is a lot of fun. And on the other hand, if somebody clicks your email 200 times, that's fantastic for deliverability. So there are some kind of secret goals behind just making things very enjoyable. We've already seen benefit from that in offering book quizzes online. So you log into our app and we give you, let's say, pick a spooky scene, and you get to pick a spooky scene. It can be like a graveyard versus a spooky looking street versus something more cozy. And based on the things that you pick in there, we were sending you Halloween recommendations for books that we think you're really going to like. There's no upsell there. We're not trying to get you to buy that book. We're not really even worried about if you're downloading that book or not. We're just trying to make our engagements a little bit more fun. I've alluded on the other end to a second point here, and that is the easier that you make emails for people to engage with, the better it's going to turn out for you. And so I often think about how we're surveying our users via email, and you're always going to see more and stronger results if you make those surveys easier to access. And so interactive emails, allowing people to just, let's say, for NPS, we say rate us on a scale of 1 to 5. If you're giving them that rating system directly in the email, you're always going to get more people and you're going to get more reasonable responses because they don't have to click through, get frustrated that survey's not loading, and possibly drop off. So between making emails more fun and making them easier to interact with and be a two-way communication tool, I think interactive emails are a huge focus for us and should be for all Lifecycle professionals.
Awesome. I love how you bring the fun, and to me, it feels like you're making it entertaining, just like you're kind of bringing the kind of experience people can have on social media, and why we're all so kind of, fixated on like waking up in the morning and then going to social media because we get instant gratification, and then creating that kind of experience within the email where you can just like do things out of fun and entertainment and not necessarily because there is an actual goal behind it, like like guessing the amount of gumballs in a jar. That's so cool. Yeah, it kind of made me think of how I think we also we try to bring like a lot of like entertainment within to emails as well, but a lot of times we think of them as more functional, and we try to bring both in the same kind of connect fun and entertaining and functional. But there's definitely space just for entertainment now that you made me think about that. So yeah, thank you.
Of course.
And what has been the most important learning you had in your career?
I think I've alluded to this, and I stand really strong by it, that experimentation is incredibly important. Looking into your data is incredibly important, but don't fall into analysis paralysis. Don't get stuck on knowing every single thing about every single user. Focus on the biggest issues that are at hand and listen to a diverse number of perspectives from different departments, from just different customers on different offers, and try not to get too locked in on one single thing.
I love it. Thank you. Okay, I have a final question for you. How would you, so like the term lifecycle, head of lifecycle, like that is kind of a new term to a lot of people. So sometimes people might ask you, like, what do you do? And you might say, I'm head of lifecycle. Like they might be like, and they might keep looking at you like, what exactly is that?
Yeah,
so how would you explain what you do to your grandma?
Yeah, I think to summarize it, it would be building long-lasting and valued relationships with people who have shown interest in audiobooks.com. And it's interesting because, yeah, I think if I said life cycle marketing to my grandmother, she wouldn't understand. But it's easy enough for me to actually argue that she would understand more than anyone else because, she has a few children, many grandchildren now, and has always operated with an open door policy of, hey, anybody is welcome in my home. I'm going to welcome them in. I'm going to sit them down. I'm going to try and understand who they are. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to anticipate their needs. Do they need a cup of tea? Do they need a cookie? My grandma's British, so always a cup of tea. And that is ultimately my goal, is welcoming people in, understanding why they're there and how I can help them, listening to any of their feedback, and then really focusing on when I'm bringing them to the door, making sure that's a valued experience and making sure that they know they're welcome back and leaving them on such a good note that they know the door is always open to return. So as complicated as I might think my role is, I think she would actually understand quite well.
Oh, and what you're saying is that you also take inspiration from your grandma and the way that she
absolutely
takes care
absolutely
of you. I love that. Oh, thank you so much, Erin. We got Chris Harris saying hi to us. So hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
And we're ready to wrap up. This is my last question. Thank you so much. I had the best time, learned so much from you. I'm sure everyone else also learned a lot. And yes, thank you again. Do you have any final remarks? Anything else that you wanted to share?
More than happy, always often to discuss churn reduction strategies, the subscription landscape, and anything in between. I think it's really, really interesting to me, and conversations like this are really important. So if you're listening today and you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out and I'm happy to talk.
Cool. And what is the best way for people to reach out to you?
LinkedIn usually is best, so reach me there.
Okay. And then it's just a matter of searching Erin O'Neill and audiobooks.com in case you find more than one Erin O'Neill's.
Exactly.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Erin. And thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.